Hello and welcome to the TGH College Hardwood Podcast. I am Joe. With me is Greg, as always, here to recap the last week of college basketball. And Greg, we're about to preview what is measuring up to be a great week of college basketball. How you doing?
I'm gonna try and be as compact as possible tonight. That's my goal. I'll try and just keep it to the I don't want to say the bare minimum, but the big bullet points and then move on to the next thing. 'Cause you're right, we got a lot to talk about.
All right, let's get to it then. We have Jerome Tang being fired by Kansas State. Now they are going to try to get him fired for cause because of the comments he made after their midweek game last week. Um, he basically said these guys don't deserve to wear the jersey. They're not going to be here next year. The AD then fired him after this weekend. The AD said the reason why he wasn't fired earlier is because he was out of town. I think it's going to be hard for them to win the fact that it was for cause, even though Jerome Tang shouldn't have said anything about he could say his players aren't trying or whatever, but he shouldn't have said anything like they're not coming back next year, any of that stuff. So as Greg is showing how good of a dog sitter he is, Greg,
Yeah.
any
Fair
thoughts about
warning,
this?
we have some friends that are exploring the scenic Australia and New Zealand, uh seeing where the Lord of the Rings was filmed and other among other things, and they've seen some big spiders too. So their
Yeah.
dog and our dog love each other. So any scratching, clawing, barking, that's not me. That's that's the dogs. But yeah, I've kind of just been chuckling over the last couple of days when I've seen I guess it's not even the last couple of days. It's the last 24 hours since Tang gets fired, because I don't know about you, Joe. Obviously, neither of us are lawyers, but I agree with you. Long shot for Kansas State to fire him for cause. I think if I had to guess, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. They just end up settling. They don't let this drag out. He's owed double digit million. They find somewhere. They meet in the middle. Everybody moves on.
Yeah, I think so too. Just a weird thing to do, like just let the year go out at least, save yourself some money. I mean, I guess now you have to hire lawyers to get this whole thing figured out. I mean, I think there's a way you could buy him out. There's plenty of buyouts all the time with coaches, so you don't have to pay that much. And I know a lot of college basketball people are saying, well, now who's going to want to work for Kansas State? I think people still want to take a power forward job and be like, hey, if you just don't say stuff like we're not going to retain anyone, these guys don't deserve to be here, then you're probably fine. So, um, Greg, I think started off his tenure at Kansas State hot with that Final Four in his first year coaching. Has not made the NCAA tournament since that point. Had a good team, Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, just guys who were very, very good, but couldn't sustain that. And it's a different game, and I fully expect him to be back on Scott Drew's staff at Baylor probably next year. So
That was exactly where my mind went. Obviously, we've seen what's kind of happened to Baylor since he left, so that feels like mutually beneficial. Unless it's going to upset, the whatever's going on in Drew's staff. Like I don't. I'm sure he doesn't want to rub some guys the wrong way that have been there, but it feels like it's something that works for both parties. So why not?
oh, absolutely, and two, I think the guys who do this for a long time, Greg, like that one Final Four run, very good. You need to sustain the success somehow, and I think that's something that people have to figure out in this transfer portal era, especially. Like they had those very good players and just could never get back. And they have talent. They've had talented players over the last couple of years. I mean, obviously PJ Haggerty this year. Ugo Onyenso is now having a role at Virginia after being there last year. So it's definitely something that people will have to figure out is like, hey, there's going to be one hit wonders. Do we take a chance on hiring this guy or giving him an extension? Or do we let him? I know there's a lot of talk that what job it was. Someone said I forget what job it was, but someone said he could have taken. I think it was the Arkansas job. They're like he was offered the Arkansas job, and Kansas State decided to re up his contract and give him more money, and they could have just let him walk. So there's a lot more going into it in this era where like the 1 year wonder stuff because of the transfer portal. A lot of teams are going to have to make decisions about keeping guys, contracts, letting them go, all that stuff. That's going to be fun to watch in the next couple of years. All right, so some injury news, Greg. Let's start with Caleb Wilson. Injures his hand. He is out for an indefinite amount of time. That scares me more than otherwise, Greg. I feel like if it was a 2 to 3 week injury, 2 to 4 week injury, they would have said that. But the indefinite makes it so it's like, oh, we're not going to say that he's back this season, and he may not be back this season. It just makes me think that like if they knew he was coming back at some point, they would have given some sort of timetable. But as far as I know, we still don't have a timetable for him returning.
Yeah, I mean, the core, the centerpiece of this team, the electric factor, the X factor for this team, in a huge class of freshmen, he's been one of the best. And that is a mouthful of words to say because there's been some really good ones. I feel like just last week we were talking about one of his games, and he put up 17 in the first half and was taking some ridiculous shots. And it's a shame. Obviously, we're going to hang on to that hope of as college basketball fans. Neither of us are Carolina fans, but we want to see guys like that on the floor, especially in March. And I mean, that's huge for this team. They've been a little unlucky between this and the Trimble injury, trying to keep guys on the floor. It kind of felt like maybe they were finding a groove and whatnot. But Miami gets the win for the game in question where he had the injury. They're looking like they are turning into a tournament team at this point. I mean, I wouldn't say they're a lock by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, I mean, if you want to start projecting long term for Carolina, I mean, that's several notches down. I don't know that I've made up my mind where that puts them for me. I think they still wind up in the tournament, but they're significantly less dangerous than they were before.
Yeah, and that's I hate to be the conspiracy theorist here. He said he's going to come back. I think Caleb Wilson's the type of player. Like we're having these issues with Aaron Peterson. We don't know if he's the one trying to play, if his agent's telling him not to play, what's going on there. Caleb Wilson's the type of guy that it just seems like he's going to play if there's any chance. There's going to be no questions about draft stock or him sitting out. But again, just like, are they saying he might come back so the tournament committee says, oh, well, they have Caleb Wilson? I think they're like 100% in the tournament for sure. But like, if they can get a better seed by saying Caleb Wilson could come back, I don't. I think that's a definite possibility that they might do that to kind of tweak things in their favor.
I don't want to say 100% because, like, if they rattle off 7 straight losses, it might be questionable. I'm not even saying if they rattle off 7 losses, they're out. I don't even know how many games they have left, but it's probably between 6 and 8, somewhere around there. But I just wouldn't, given the circumstances, I wouldn't want to say they're for sure in, and I wouldn't want to say that that's not going to happen. They're not going to lose that many straight games. I'm with you. I think they wind up in. I just think they are. I'm sorry, Luna is walking in with the squeakiest toy possible, and I'm just waiting for the inevitable. So just
if you
just be ready.
If you see Greg get up, point. If you see Greg to go up and take a toy, you know what he's doing. Yeah, right. Not really possible, but they do have a tougher slate the rest of the regular season in the ACC. So only 5 losses this year. If they lose the next 5 out of 6, they're probably still in. But I guess you're right. Don't say anything in absolutes here. The next injury we have to get to, Greg, Richie Saunders tears his ACL for BYU. He is out for the season, as those injuries usually go. That's a big blow for a team that we have been sitting here dying for them to get a marquee win for the last month and a half, 2 months. And that's not going to be good for like their ceiling in the tournament. We have talked about, teams that we're going to be starting to talk about teams who can win it all. And I'm not going to say they're a team, them or North Carolina aren't teams that I don't think we're taking off tonight, Greg, because we have to see how these things go. But like, I would say I have my doubts, and these teams better show they can do big things without the guys who are injured right now.
Yeah, they're sitting at 20th in the net, and I feel like that's not what I would have guessed. We keep waiting for that marquee, that key win. They have quad 1 wins, but they're not those really good ones. To be fair though, Joe, they have no losses outside of Q1, but there's just not, I'll say this. We're going to talk about Wisconsin a little bit here in a couple minutes. That win was on a neutral. They beat Wisconsin in November, and that win is shaping up that it might be something. But as of 2 weeks ago, I think we thought, yeah, it's a good win, but not a great one. It may, the way Wisconsin's trending, that may turn out to be a great one. We'll just have to see on that. Rob Wright was great. I think he had 39, but they took overtime to beat Colorado. We've had too many things to say about this team in the teetering, in the negative. slow starts,
Yeah.
against Delaware and Dayton. And yeah, the opening night they look good against Clemson. We'll talk about Clemson in a little bit, but
Yeah.
I just this feels like, especially with this personnel type change, this feels like this is a team that's going to miss the cut line for us when we're picking out. And again, maybe something they've got Arizona, Iowa State, UCF, West Virginia, UC, Texas Tech left. I mean, if they beat, you know, Arizona and Iowa State, like, okay, maybe I'll think about it, but I wouldn't project that based on, the amount of floor spacing that Saunders provides, just with his shooting threat. I mean, it's going to really clump things up for Devonsa, who can create space for himself, but he likes taking that mid range jumper. It's going to be a little more condensed for them.
No, it is, and you have to think their offensive efficiency will take a hit. They are seventh and in offensive efficiency, and their defense might take a little step forward. I mean, just I don't think Richie Saunders is like a bad defender by any means, but maybe they find a way to get better defensively because of it. But even if that evens out, I just don't know if it's a national championship winning team. It's hard to take that team off our list right now, Greg, because they just have so much talent. But the defensive efficiency is ranked 50th in the country by KenPom. Like that's a good team, and if they don't fix it in a month, they're off the list. So don't want to do that with how good they are and how this I like some of the players on their team, but very impactful injury. Greg, we're going to get to another injury when we start recapping games here too. But let's get to our recap of the games. Let's start it off with let's go with last Monday, Greg. We have the Arizona Kansas game is the first one we're going to go over. Kansas wins this one 82-78. Now, a little bit before this game, there's some controversy. Darren Peterson is out, like a last minute, last like hour before the game type of thing. He's out there warming up. He looks okay, but turns out he is sick this time. So it's been what an ankle, a hamstring, a sick, whatever. I mean, again, getting to the point now where we're just having a lot of questions about things. Maybe he is really unlucky, but that's also not as likely. There's a picture of the scorers table where as someone who is not employed by either university, but more just for the production of the game, is like texting about how he said he was sick, and Bill Self said if you don't feel great, then don't play, that type of thing. And he said, F this, I'm out. was the exact I think phrasing on that, but he doesn't play. So you're thinking all the drama around it, everything else. You think, oh, Arizona's going to win this. Well, they did not. Kansas is very experienced without Darren Peterson now. Badunga had 23 points, 10 rebounds. Council had 23 points, but it was on 6 of 25 shooting. There was an interesting press conference moment with him and Badunga afterwards where Badunga said to pass the ball more because he was shot 6 of 25. Burries was good for Arizona, 25 points, 9 of 18 shooting, 4 of 7 from deep. There is a couple points I have to make about this game, Greg, but I'll let you get to any thoughts you may have first.
Yeah, Flory was awesome in this game, and one of the main reasons they win. Bryson Tiller's really been coming along. I guess I just still have to question myself of how good can this team be without Darren Peterson. Well, they give Arizona their first loss of the season, so I guess they can be pretty darn good. I know it was at Fog Allen Fieldhouse, but still, I think the things with Arizona that I'm looking at is, I Coa-Pete does affect the game in many different ways other than just scoring, but I do feel like with the way we open the season, and I understand we've made the point about this team. Hey, there's 7 starters. Okay, I still feel like I've been expecting more ball in the bucket type from him, and of course, give me that.
All right. I'll fill in here, Greg, because I actually had the same point. He has not produced. I think, and so just to kind of set everything up, because we're going to talk about it later too. He gets injured in the game later this week. We don't have an injury update on him. They don't. I don't think they think it's that serious. We just never know. They said they're waiting on tests. He scored 2 points against Texas Tech in 11 minutes. That's the game later this week. He scored 6 points against Kansas. He scored only 10 against BYU. So all the big competition they played, I mean, he scored six against Alabama. The last time he had a big game against a team that is like very good or like a team that we've thought would be really good this year was 18 points against Auburn. And the 16-point game against UConn and the 30-point game against Florida. So he almost like started off really hot and then he's coming back down to earth. And then you get to a point now, Greg, where I mean, I'll talk about it more in the game later, but like Burries is the freshman to know on this team. One, because he's been the leading scorer and I think he's more important. But there might be a chance where he comes back and maybe he starts coming off the bench a little bit more because they do have those 7 starters.
You think he comes back next year is what you're saying?
No. I'm saying later this year, maybe he starts coming
Oh,
back.
okay. Oh, okay. You mean
If
when he
he
comes back from injury? Okay.
if
Okay.
he comes back from injury, like, if he's ready to go this week, maybe they're like, oh, okay, well then he's back in the starting lineup. But if he's missed his time, I think there's definitely a world where they use him as a sub because he's just been. I think he hit that freshman wall at some point in Big 12 play where he just hasn't been as impressive. There's still some good games in there. He's still a very good player, but just not the player we saw in that first week. To your point, Greg.
Yeah, and again, the situation may be different on a team where he's the featured piece. That is the thing, man. Is there's just a lot of different ways that this team can skin the cat, kind of thing. I specifically remember early in the season talking about like when is Burry's going to pop? He's a 5-star freshman and whatnot, and now it's happening. It's just I know Waffle is not a fan of Koa Pete not getting the ball, I guess, but dang it, maybe lose my train of thought. Waff, come here. It just may be there's only one basketball type issue. I don't know. I'm not because I feel like when I'm watching the game, as far as skill set, like he's got it. His shot selection is good. He looks under control. He's got skill. It's not just pure like physicality. He's good on defense. But it literally just may be there's only one ball and only one ball that goes in the floor. And the other thing is this team doesn't shoot a lot of threes, so they don't get into the 90s, hundreds a lot like some of these other teams. So that also may be a contributor.
Yeah, and I also didn't mention at UCF a couple weeks ago, another team that we found out was better than we thought this year, 4 points. So like, you know, I'll talk about more of the solution to the problem later on. But that was the point here is what happened to Koa Pete. I think he just hit the freshman wall. I think they're fine overall. I think you can rotate things in and out, and people just have to be okay with their roles. And for honestly, for so far this year, veterans are okay coming off the bench. Freshmen are starting, getting a lot of points. Both the freshmen are leading the team in scoring, the top two guys. So, like, I think they're a team that has the veteran leadership to do it. But that was the point about Arizona. For Kansas, Greg, I think Flory Verdugo is one of the most improved players in the country. It's not as much as like the stats. There's guys you can find out there like Cameron Carr, who went from Tennessee to Baylor, who's like jumping out and like getting this new opportunity. But from a guy who played last year a lot and doesn't show up in the numbers as much, he was a guy that maybe could protect the rim a little bit last year. And I don't know if he's really diversified his game a ton, but he is so much better at getting rebounds. If he gets the ball 2 feet in the paint, he is scoring. And I still think he has a long way to go in terms of, adding a jump shot or adding more post moves. But he didn't have as good of a game later on when we talk about the game later this week. But every time I watch him, I'm just thinking, like, this is a guy I could easily see just being a non factor this year after what we showed. Like, not a non factor, but like, it's very similar to last year. Like, he just doesn't take that step. We see that with big guys all the time. He has taken that step. And, like, too early to think about this. I don't think he's going pro after this year, Greg. I think he's a guy we could be talking about next year as being all American candidate because I think he's taken that big of a step in this 1 year.
Yeah, I specifically remember about 3 or 4 instances where I was thinking the rim protection, especially the help defense rim protection, made a difference in this game. He finishes with 3 blocks. Honest, if you would have made me bet, I would have guessed it was more than that. I'm not sure how many shots he affected. I'm not sure how many deflections there were on passes, but I definitely remember him coming over to help on plays in the paint that weren't his assigned man. So, that's a defensive intelligence thing that he seems to have grasped onto. But I'm right there with you. the offense looks a lot better. He's got a little more skill than he did last year. So I don't know if it's a ton more. Like you said, I don't think he's like wildly developed his game, but he's a little more assertive than he was before.
Yeah, and that could take him a long way. Again, it makes me wonder what they would have done if they would have just kind of said, "Oh, Hunter Dickinson, you can leave," and he got to play all last year too. I mean, they did play both of them a lot, but just I mean, like if he was the guy on the inside, but did he have that game sealing block, Greg, to help them too, which I think was really big. But let's move on. We've like you said, we have a lot to get to, so let's move on to Tuesday. We have Purdue beating Nebraska 80-70.
Whoa, 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 whoa! You're missing a big note from. I know I have it as a quick hit.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I've skipped it.
Big note from
Go
Monday.
ahead. Go ahead, buddy. You set it
Michael
up.
Brown scores 45 points on what was it, 10 of 15 shooting from three. Here's the sad part of the story. Can you imagine being Ryan Cromwell and hey, you put up 31. Oh yeah, your teammate put up 45. So that Louisville team is maybe not what we thought they were going to be, but they still have that spark that might make them. I don't know. Just I don't think this is a Final Four team, but maybe they win a game or two and they cut something close in the Sweet 16. We'll see.
I'm with you. Impressive performance. I believe that is like the fifth freshman that scored 40 points now, which has to be some sort of record, at least in power conference basketball. Um, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they're a Final Four team, but I kind of feel the same way, similar way to them as I do about like Alabama, where it's just the shooting teams don't really know about how it's going to go. And when Michael Brown is on, one of the best players in the country, but we've seen him when he's off, and it's ugly. So don't know. Like when I'm filling out a bracket, the trust meter, like there's teams that I think we're going to have real issues with trusting. Greg, I think obviously Kansas with Aaron Peterson. We talked about that. Louisville's a team. I don't know how much I trust them. I mean, we'll see what seed they get, but like that's one of the things where when they throw up stinkers, they throw up some pretty bad stinkers.
All right, now you can go to
All
Tuesday.
right. Let's go to on Tuesday, Greg. We had Purdue beating Nebraska on the road 80-77. This one went to overtime. It was a game where Purdue got started pretty hot. Nebraska's able to come back, and then Purdue holds on in overtime. Purdue was up 12 with 2 minutes left, Greg. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say like the Purdue backcourt, like what how do you have these veteran players in the backcourt? How do you not close out this game? I know all credit to Nebraska, but how you have those guys, and that's what happens. Fletcher Lawyer had 18 points, but it was on 5 of 20 from the floor. Four of it was I have it. I don't even think that's right, Greg. 4 of 17 from three. Did I have that right?
That's
I have to
right.
double check.
That's
Holy
right.
shoot!
Right.
And then TKR had a career high 19 rebounds. Oscar Clough had a layup with 3.9 seconds left in OT to give them the win. Greg, Nebraska, I still don't think is quite back to being full health. They're a team that I think are still trying to figure things out. I'm not going to ding them too much for this loss, but even in this win for Purdue, I'm just how do you not close out when you're up by 12 with 2 minutes left? Fletcher Lawyer keeps on throwing up stinkers. I the same thing I said the last week, so I won't go any further. But it feels gross.
So Fletcher Lawyer, you're 4 of 17, but watching this game, he had so many. These were not like prayers contested; they were wide open looks, man. And that I think what I walked away from that saying, I don't know if I feel like Nebraska got a little lucky or if it made me think about maybe their perimeter defense needs big work because I feel like the last time I looked, and I haven't looked in a couple days, that they were like top 10 in defensive efficiency. I thought, and maybe I'm making that up completely. I could be saying something that's eighth. They're still at eighth, and I remember thinking like these looks are wide open for a guy that has been struggling this year, but I feel like this had an opportunity to be his game where he just lights it on fire and he's back. And, he's had a couple of games over the last couple of weeks that, he's put up some numbers. But it's still been, the guards are not giving him what they need. That's been pretty much a story, like you said, for a while now. I do want to kind of focus on Clough, man, because this felt like the game. They get up 14-1 and it felt like it didn't matter what the score was. This guy was, hard hat on, going in for the big rebounds, doing what they brought him in here to do. And lo and behold, he's the one that gets the late bucket and the foul. He didn't make the free throw, but he's the one that gets them that last inch that they needed. The the front court is not in question with Purdue. It's the backcourt. You already said it. I am still team. I wish Omer Meyer would get more play. I, you know, it is what it is. I 11 minutes doesn't feel like enough for me. I feel like he's got a skill set that this team could use. Um, I don't know. They put up a ton of threes, Joe, and a lot of them were open. I mean, CJ Cox got a lot of open looks. And if you look up and down the stat sheet and you see a bunch of these guys that missed a lot of threes, okay, but a lot of them were open. I don't know. Maybe they just don't have the capability to be that good three-point shooting team. But I just kept thinking through this game, this had the capability to be, a 35-point blowout, but those shots just weren't going for Purdue. And there were a few things towards the end, a few free throws that got missed that's how we get to overtime that were just uncharacteristic of this Purdue team, even though it was on the road. So I still want to believe in this in the Boilermakers, but man, it's getting tough.
Yeah, we saw Fletcher Lawyer get put in the friend zone too. If you follow us along on social media,
Ooh.
um, yeah, probably was real that that was just his friend from birth, but still, it's doesn't feel good nonetheless. And I feel bad. Like I wanted to believe that there would be some progression with this Purdue backcourt, but we're still it's year four, Greg, and we're seeing the same issues. Fletcher Lawyer is just a shooter, and at this point, he's a streaky one at that. Braden Smith is good. He can set up different people to get shots. He can get assists. We know that. He's going to go down as one of the all time best at assists. In terms of getting his shot, if it's not that weird mid range thing, he doesn't really have much of a get to the basket thing. He doesn't shoot the most threes. This Purdue team doesn't have that athleticism on the perimeter. It just feels like an odd fit. They do rank 19th in defensive efficiency, but it just doesn't feel like it's like perimeter based in a way that's really going to be good. So, like, yeah, they have TKR and Oscar Clough on the inside. That's good. But also, like I said before, Greg, it seems like they're kind of cannibalizing each other on the inside. And maybe that's good for rebounding where they get 19 and 14 in this game. But, like, TKR had 6 points. He's been, for a guy that we thought first team All American, he's just been bad. And it's not, I don't think it's his fault, to be honest. He went 3 of 5 from the floor. He's doing what he can, 19 rebounds. But it's a weird formulated team, and I feel bad for maybe thinking that the Purdue backcourt would like improve from their freshman and sophomore seasons, and maybe they have in small ways, but just not to the point where I thought they'd be at this point if they all stayed for 4 years.
We said it before, but we'll say it again. He had a significant skill advantage. Trey Kaufman-Renn playing as an undersized five, as opposed to now playing a lot more of the four man. His points per game average is down. Like, I don't know if it's not quite half of what it was, but it's definitely down. 8 or 9 points from where it was last year, and he's on the floor almost 40 minutes. So there's no doubt that he knows how to body bump and he knows how to get over the shoulder and get those shots. But it's just maybe there's not as much of a skill gap when he's going against a player that is also kind of a little bit of a skilled four type man.
Yeah, you mentioned it, 20.1 points per game last year, down to 12.4. Just, Oscar Clough gets his, but you thought there might be a little bit more of an even balance of maybe he loses 2 or 3 points on his average, but it'd be all be okay in the end. But all right, we'll make sure to keep tabs on this Purdue team later on. But the next one up, Greg, we're going to talk about Wisconsin basketball for a little bit here. Wisconsin beats Illinois on Tuesday. They win 92-90. This one also in overtime. You have to give it up to the Wisconsin guards, Greg. Blackwell, 24 points, 9 of 22 shooting. Boyd, 25 points, 10 of 19 shooting. Both were really good in overtime in this one. Illinois was not at full strength. There was no Stojakovic. There was no Boswell in this game. So I'm not going to again get too much into the weeds of the Illinois team other than to say Keaton Wagler, 34 points, 12 of 23 shooting. Maybe some of the guys being out for this team helped him develop in a way as an under recruited guy. Maybe that helps out a little bit. But Wisconsin's guards are good. And, I think that Illinois was up by 12 with like 8 minutes to go. You would think they'd be able to close that out, but without those guys, without Boswell and Stojakovic, it just makes it harder.
I mean, they played 6 guys. Like,
Yeah,
them petering out at the end, not the most surprising thing. Yeah, with that kind of lead, a lot of teams can hang on. They literally played 6 guys,
Mhm.
and I know that's an excuse or whatever, but there's comes a point where it's like they're tired. I mean, they're tired. This is, there's a lot of movement to this offense. It's there's a lot of action. Um, so and they're playing obviously both sides of the ball. I do think I'm still a believer in this Illinois team. Uh, they do have a trip coming out west this week, and I just kind of want to preface that because I think it's USC first and then UCLA, and we know what happens. Granted, they're not traveling from the East Coast; they're traveling from the Midwest. It's not necessarily as far, but I still, hey, they've got injuries on and off. I think Boswell ended up coming back yesterday, but let's not assume that he's 100%. I don't think Stojakovic played yesterday. I didn't look at the stat sheet. I didn't
he
have a
didn't.
chance. Okay. So basically, they're not 100% healthy. They're going out west. If they drop both games this week, I'll be a little concerned, but like it's not gonna take them from national title contender to off the list for me. I would like to see them. I feel like if they split, I'll feel very comfortable still feeling the same way about Illinois. They win both. I mean, I feel like that's a great sign for where I think Illinois can be. I don't know if I'm higher on them than you are, but I really feel like this is a team I would not be comfortable leaving out of our top 10. And I think, Joe, this was one of the teams that was outside of that top 12 in the week 6 AP poll. I think they were like 13th or 14th. They were like, I'm pretty sure this is one of those when we were going through the teams, we were like, okay, these are the teams that you'd be leaving out. I think this was one because you remember they had a somewhat slow start to the season.
Yeah, no, they would be. As much, I don't really believe in that as much. It's interesting,
I
something to
know,
look
just
at,
bring it
but
up with people,
but yeah, but I think I will say that I do believe in the Ken Palm numbers at the end of the day. 28th in defensive rating. That's going to be the thing that really holds them back from maybe being as good as maybe they think they can. But Greg, all
Yeah,
the
but if
injury,
you're number one in offense,
yeah, I was saying, with them being number one with all the injuries they've had is one of the more impressive statistical things I can remember. Just because Wagler's had to step up in such a way, Boswell being out for like what 3 4 weeks, and then all the injuries and stuff in the beginning of the year too. I don't think people remember that as much either. So good for them for that. And yeah, I'm not really out on them either. Just you're injured, that's what happens. All right, so let's go on to Wisconsin's next game. This was at home on Friday against Michigan State, and they beat the brakes off them, 92-71. Um, the let's see. Oh no, we missed one. We missed Arkansas and Alabama.
no, no. Did I put that? I think I put that. Yeah, I put that in the wrong. Oh, Joe, that's a pick. I put it in the
Yeah,
recap.
I was gonna
Oh
say.
no! All right, we both made a mistake tonight. We're even. We're even. We're even.
Yeah, I have all my recaps here in a row, and I looked at your face when I was doing that, and then yeah. All right, so we'll stick with Wisconsin. They win 92-71, beat the brakes off of Michigan State. They were up by 16, 17 at the half. Was a game where Blackwell 24 points, Boyd 29 points. Jeremy Fears had his 14 points, 12 assists like he usually does. Seems like he's pressing for offense a little bit more to like to score the basketball. He was 3 of 12 from the floor, and I get why he would do that given the roster construction of Michigan State. And Greg, the only thing I'm going to say is, Wisconsin, we've seen the ups, we've seen the downs. They're a roller coaster all year long. With that guard play, I do not want them on the schedule in March. I'm not saying they're going to go to the Final Four. I'm not saying they're the greatest team ever, but All I'm saying is those two guards. We know guard play wins in March. I don't want to. I don't want that. If I'm, I don't know what seed they're going to be in March Madness. If they have a 6 seed, I don't want to be the 11 getting them. If they're a 7 seed, I don't want to be the 10 getting them. I'll tell you that much. I don't want them at all.
And not only is it guard play, Joe, but it's guard play. It's I don't want to say it's almost Illinois like. I maybe should have brought this up last time, but like it's guard play, great guard play with pick and pop capability. Biliauskas can shoot. Nolan Winter can shoot. Austin Rapp can shoot. I think Austin Rapp had the better game against Illinois. Um, all of those guys have pick and pop capability. That pairs really well with a good pair of guards. I mean, obviously any type of front court, uh, is going to pair really well with good guards. But a lot of the teams they're going to be facing are probably going to have, I don't want to say more traditional bigs, but you're not going to be able to play that drop coverage that a lot of teams like to play to take away the pick and roll. This team is going to pick and pop a lot, maybe not as much as other teams, but those guys that we mentioned, they're capable of shooting the ball. That's makes this team very dangerous. We did mention several weeks ago after they beat was it after they beat Michigan was probably the first time we brought this team up, and we were looking ahead at their schedule and we said, well, I'm going to take credit because I said, well, maybe they're ranked by the time they play Illinois. They weren't, but now they are. So they pop into the top 25 this week. Good for them. But we both did see several weeks ago, from that Michigan game, and I know there's another one they have somewhere that I'm forgetting. There's another big win that they have.
I don't know off the top of my head for sure. So
Well, but I'm with you. I think that's a good analysis. I don't want to play him. That's a pretty darn good way to put it.
they could lose by 20 in the first round, and I'll still say my analysis was right. I don't want to play them. That's just with the guard play the way it is, and the way they, as you said, pick and pop. It's something I would agree with. Um, all right, Greg, let's go to Saturday for some recaps here. Clemson earlier in the week lost to Virginia Tech, and then they lost to Duke.
Thank
Gre-
goodness.
Greg was
We're
hoping
done.
we wouldn't have them as national title contenders. I did not think they were even close to that, no matter what. But yeah, I don't have too much on this game. Boozer, 18 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. They one player in double figures for Clemson. It was a bad week overall for them. Duke's defense has been a lot better since that early ACC slate where they give up a ton of threes. They've been a lot better. Dame Sarr has been specifically good on defense for them. Duke is exactly who we thought they were. Still the issues we talked about earlier in the year, but for this case, Greg, I know you want to talk about some ACC bubble talk. Clemson is still probably solidly in the tournament, maybe like a 7 or so seed, but you get a little bit closer to the bubble with this week they had.
Yeah, there was a lot that happened on Saturday in the ACC. So Florida State beats Virginia Tech. Joe, does that effectively? I mean, that effectively ends Virginia Tech looking like a tournament team, right? I mean, I guess
Yeah.
they could win. They could rattle off a bunch straight, but we talked about Abdallas earlier in the season. There's a couple other things to like about that team, but it just kind of feels like losing to Florida State at home. And I guess props to Florida State because they look like a team that was dead in the water early in the year, and they have gotten a couple of okay wins. So maybe Luke Laux is figuring some things out, and that team might be something to look at next year. But um, the other thing, let's see, there were a couple things that happened on Saturday. Like I said, Syracuse beats SMU. That's not good for them. That was a team that was kind of been on our radar. I would say that's trouble at this point, right? Um, the other team that we really haven't talked a lot about, we mentioned them briefly because they beat Carolina, but they finish the weekend off by beating NC State at NC State, and that's Miami, Florida. Joe, we've barely talked about that team. They're 20-5.
Yeah, that's the schedule helping them out in that case. We barely talked about them because they haven't played that many teams. In a similar way to Clemson last week, I would say. ACC team, they deserve a lot of credit. I believe they were a 10 seed in Lenardi's bracketology before this weekend. I don't know how that's going to affect them. I'm going to have my next bracketology done later this week. Um, you know, Miami beating UNC and NC State in the same week is huge. Um, but so they're probably off of the bubble for now. You mentioned SMU, probably off the bubble. You're right. I think the way you broke it down was probably perfect. Virginia Tech's pretty much out on the outside looking at the very least. SMU getting closer to the bubble with that loss. Miami in a solid spot. NC State still in a solid spot. Shouldn't be overly comfortable though. All right, Greg, let's get to the St. John's and Providence mayhem. There's a little bit of bad blood from this because of Bryce Hopkins transferring from Providence to St. John's. And what do you know? Duncan Powell.
What else? What else? What other reason would there be bad blood for Providence fans and playing
You,
St. John's of all schools right now?
you go ahead. Yeah, you tell
Rick Pitino,
him. Yeah. Um,
who got out on the floor. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to jump
Yeah.
ahead. No
Okay.
spoilers.
So Bryce Hopkins is the one who gets taken out by Duncan Powell. The slow mo replay looks really bad. In real time, it looked bad, but not as bad as slow mo. He got his face grabbed back, and like it was very dangerous play, dirty, no space for in college basketball for that. I believe it's technically a 3-game suspension now for Duncan Powell. It was 1 game by the NCAA and then 2 games by the ACC. To be honest, wouldn't be surprised if Providence just says, "Hey, man, why don't we just shut this thing down for the year or something?" I don't know, but 6 players get ejected. Some of them for leaving the bench. We saw Rick Pitino go out there and try to defend his guys and look crazy eyes out there. There was another incident later in the game where another ejection happened, so there was 7 people ejected. It was like we said, Greg, ugly game, ugly in just about every way. St. John's wins 79-69. But yeah, Providence has had a bad year. I think not being able to control themselves on the court, as well as not being able to win games, is probably going to end the Kim English era at Providence this year.
Yeah, Joe, I think the only question we have is was the foul worse or is the haircut worse? I have scoured the internet. It does not appear that he has any sort of condition, so we're allowed to make jokes. I'm honestly not sure what's worse.
I would say that the foul is worse, but I could see a scenario where people can get injured by being like if they're driving their car and they see that guy's hair, they'd be like, "Oh my god, I'm going to crash right now because I'm not paying attention." So, um, I feel like I should have brought this up beforehand because I did see him play last year when he was at Georgia Tech. I went to see Georgia Tech at Cincinnati last like Thanksgiving week before Thanksgiving, but yeah, it was an ugly scene. We're gonna see, like I said, maybe some more punishments coming down. We're gonna see Kim English probably getting fired, and again, mostly for on the court stuff, but this can't help either. So
Well, I
sounds to
think the
be.
best part, Joe, was the last guy that got thrown out for Providence, Jameer Jones. I can't remember what kind of foul it was, but you saw King. Did you? So everybody watched. You know, if you haven't seen the clip of the entire melee brawl type thing, go watch it. It's actually worth your time. You don't need to watch the 20 minutes of delay where they review everything, but the 1 to 2 minutes of chaos was great. Jameer Jones, questionable foul. And you got to know with the way the game that this comes after the brawl. So you got to know it's a tight whistle. And you just see Kim English. Kim English is on the floor, literally in the paint after this happens. And you see his face. And he's like, "What the are you doing?" Like, he's like, "Come on, man." Like, it just exasperated. It is like bad to worse. I guess, we'll give a little bit of props to St. John's. I know this is obviously the game they should win easily, but they did have, a decent amount of their bench kicked out of the game for leaving the bench during the I don't know, I'm running out of synonyms to say at this point during the fight, right? So I know it's a little bit of when it's a foul on one of your players, it's something that happens to one of your players. It tends to supercharge you, but still, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of emotion. They square down and get the game done. Again, Dylan Darling, really comfortable. That's the only other note. We've already mentioned it. We know who Zuby Ejiofor is. We know who a lot of the other guys are. Dylan Darling looking comfortable might take this team to a level that we thought. I don't want to say that we thought they were going to be preseason, but I feel like if you want to put it in a 1, 2, 3, okay, we thought this was going to be a tier 1 team, and then all of a sudden, okay, maybe they're more of a tier 3 team, and it's like him looking as he has is definitely taking this team up a tier from where they were.
Yeah, I mean, just
That and Dylan Mitchell coming into the starting lineup, which you mentioned last week when we talked about them.
yeah, just I mean, even with if Dylan Mitchell was on the bench, I think the Darling thing is better because the guard play has been the thing where it's like we just don't know where the scoring is going to come from. You've mentioned Ian Jackson and how the back and forth with who's going to be the point guard, then he's not, and basically they I don't know. It seems like they're trashing him a little bit before the season started, and now Darling comes in as a more solidified guy who can score the basketball. I would say. Greg, let's go to Kansas and Iowa State. Now, we've talked about Kansas a lot before, so we're going to keep this one pretty short. TCU ended up beating Iowa State earlier in the week. Iowa State rebounds and wins this 174-56. A blowout. Milan Momcilovic had 18 points, 4 of 9 shooting from deep. Peterson did play in this one, Greg. 10 points, 3 of 10 from the floor in 24 minutes. He did not play in the last 7 or 8 minutes. Kind of
Yeah,
wonder how.
right.
Yeah.
Say it ain't so.
Yeah. Very clearly, hey, we're losing by a lot of points. I don't know if it's Bill Self taking him out or himself taking himself out. I kind of wonder about the chemistry issues of the preferential treatment of that, whether the players are okay with all this going on, or like honestly, they kicked Arizona's butt. It wasn't a blowout or anything, but they kicked Arizona's butt earlier the week without him. He comes back in and they lose by 18. Uh, Now, Greg, I thought Iowa State would win. I still think Kansas has a higher ceiling, but it's getting to be more nebulous on how Kansas reaches that ceiling as time goes on with Darren Peterson. Because we got before this week when I said that, Greg, I truly believed Darren Peterson was going to kind of okay, I'm going to slowly work my way in, everything's going to be fine. And then this week happened, and like I said, I already said enough about Kansas, but I think people can all agree on that how they reach the ceiling, even if it is higher than a team like Iowa State, is more nebulous than a team like Iowa State has a higher floor, and they might be better just because the floor is so high.
Okay, let me take that in for a second. All right, so we're saying the floor for Iowa State is higher because they're more of a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
The ceiling is not as high as Kansas just because of but also the thing. Okay, so if things could really bottom out for Kansas,
Yeah,
well below the floor of Iowa. Okay, I'm following. I'm just making sure I'm following the analysis here. I would agree with that. I do think Iowa State is solid enough that you count on them in most games to at least be competitive. You can turn around in some games with Kansas and either, hey, they're going to blow them out, or, maybe not some games, but long term. I just it's getting to the point where we're questioning. It's like, is it better to just like I obviously Darren Peterson takes his team to a whole new level, but they've proven what they can do without him. I don't know, man. It's just, is it time to start asking that question? Does Bill Self just need to be done with this thing? Is that as good as he is? Is that crazy to say?
are you saying done with the situation or just
Yeah,
retire?
like just tell him like either like put up or shut up, dude.
I don't know. This is crazy. Like same thing happened with Joel Embiid. It's Joel Embiid's agent. It's tough, man. I don't know. I feel like at some respect, it might be better for the team to tell him to cut it out, and if he walks, he walks. But I don't know how to answer that.
So I guess let me put this a different way. I almost wonder if it's better for Bill Self to kind of put his foot down metaphorically and live with the consequences. If the consequences are no more nonsense, okay. If the consequences are, well, my agent says I'm done for the year, you got to live with that too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just to be done with the you said the nebulousness. They're just in limbo right now, not knowing. We've seen what they can do with him. We've seen what they can do without him. But this gray area of, an hour before tip, like the starting lineups are turned in, on Monday night, and he just doesn't play,
Yeah.
is insane. And other players might get the benefit of the doubt. He's lost that card. That's gone.
He better start playing a lot down the stretch is what I got to say to that. And I don't see other players having the same issues. And like, what was the game earlier, Greg, where he pulled himself out after like during a turnover, and it
Well,
was like
yeah.
during the game.
It was the TCU game that they won in
Yeah,
overtime. He's at midcourt. The ball comes flying at him as he's turning to Bill Self to tell him to take him out. And then in that game, he goes back in for like the last possession and ends up scoring. I think he got fouled and hit the win, like the game tying free throws or whatever. But
dude.
this is like Michael Porter Jr. esque type mystery.
I still don't get why, if the health is an issue, why do you not just shut it down for even like the next 2 weeks or something and bring it back in March, play the last regular season games, play March, like
But here's the thing, Joe.
why?
That's when the story was the hamstring
It's
is
true.
really bothering me. Now it's been an ankle. Now it's I got the flu. Like it's just like I would tell this guy never to play the lottery. He seems like the most unlucky person ever. I don't know if maybe it's worth just telling him, hey, shut it down so that you can get drafted and at least get a paycheck before you get a DeLon Wagner type something happening to you.
Even settle down for this week, Greg. Play at Oklahoma State and against Cincinnati at home. Oklahoma State on the road does present some issues for Kansas historically, but if you can't beat these two teams without him, then you kind of deserve it. So that's what I would say. But what do I know? I'm not a doctor and not a basketball coach, so we'll see. Again, just have to figure out these teams. We're gonna have, like I said, Greg. There are so many teams where we're going into March Madness where it's like I do not know what to do. I could pick them to go Final Four. I could pick them to lose first round. I think this might be the year where we've had the most cases, and a lot of it does stem from a team that's so high profile like Kansas. But there's also like teams like who did I mention earlier too, Greg? It was Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a team the same way where we just don't know what we're going to get. So all right, let's go to the next thing up, Greg. We have Kentucky losing to Florida. Florida wins 92 to 83. Florida, I mean, to sum it up, Greg, Florida's not a great three-point shooting team. They're, I believe, 345th, 46th in the country in shooting threes. But when you have Xavier Lee hitting 4 and Klavzar hitting 5, that's going to win you the game. It's as simple as that. Florida had, or excuse me, UK had a slower start. Florida capitalized on Kentucky's turnovers. Again, not having that true point guard in, a little bit of an issue for Kentucky. They kept it close, though, and I think that deserves to be mentioned for how many big leads that Kentucky gives up for the most part. And there's a lot of talk about the BS calls. Florida was in the bonus with like 15-43 in the second half. Yeah, there's some bad calls, but this just wasn't Kentucky's night with the guys hitting threes. And when you have a team like Florida who has that dominating front court and they're going to go inside, they're going to get a lot more calls. There were some really bad ones in this game, but I'm not going to sit here and blame the officiating for the loss. Don't turn the ball over in the first half. And to be honest, like it's not a loss where I'm as a Kentucky fan sitting here saying the sky is falling like I have been at other points this year. So good win for Florida. They're showing very well that they're kind of on the right pace to get things done. And for Kentucky, they don't get
There's
the win.
definitely something going on downstairs. I'm hearing a bunch of noises. I don't know what. I don't even want to guess, but my wife is now home with the dogs. I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't sound good. So
Oh boy.
I'm sure she's fine.
But yeah, just finishing up, Greg. They have the guys on the inside who are so good. Thomas Hawes awesome, and just that's what's how you're gonna get foul calls if you go inside.
Yeah, I think you put it really well. The only thing that I wanted to mention, we mentioned it when we podcasted last week. I said, "Hey, do we know what Jaden Quainton's status is?" Because that would
Yeah.
really have been the only thing that would have made me even consider picking Kentucky in this game. Some kind of defensive presence to help them go up against, this Florida front court. We got pretty much what you would expect, on top of or I guess you get what you expect from the front court, and then you get the shooting. If anything, it's moral victory Kentucky. They hang into this game in Gainesville. You're right, man. Like a 9-point loss with all that running against you. We know where this team has been. They've lost Jalen Lowe. They've lost Cam Williams, and I feel like a broken record. I'm tired of saying it, but this Kentucky team's persevered a lot more than you would have thought. I mean, it felt like this thing was going off the rails, and Kentucky fans, not present company excluded. Joe's a Kentucky fan, but he's not a nut job. But you started to get to the point where it's like, yeah, they made the Sweet 16 last year, but maybe some Kentucky fans, because we're just so stuck on how much we spent on the roster, are ready to, start talking about firing Mark Pope, which again is insane, but they're Kentucky fans, so it is what it is. Um, yeah, I mean, this Florida team is really good, and I know the guard play could be better, but it's at least progressing. That's something. It's not stagnant. Boogie Fland has had his moments. Obviously Lee had a good game in this game. Glavzar, I feel like, has kind of been a non-factor for some time, so it's nice to see him get back into being one of the contributors on the team. This is a team without a lot of depth. We've mentioned that. That could be the one thing that could kill them is, one injury. They've been a lot luckier on the injury perspective than Kentucky, but this team with the guard concerns on trending up makes me, again, just thinking long term, it makes me feel like this is going to be one of the teams I'm going to want in our top 10 for national title contenders.
Oh boy, I'm not sure I'm that high on them, but I hope they would be there at the start of the season when I picked them at SEC champions. But the lack of depth in the 3-point shooting is definitely concerning. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe they keep on progressing, like you said, Greg. Maybe they get to the point where I'm with you. But Kentucky, on the other hand, Greg, as you said, rough season, guys injured. To kind of give an update, still hasn't ruled. Mark Pope still hasn't ruled Cam Williams or Jaden Quaintance out. I mean, it's three of their projected five best players have been out and for so long this year. But I think this gives you a lot of hope as a Kentucky fan that they were able to rebound. The seasons isn't over, but the fact that they were able to do what they did and kind of get to a spot where it's solid is good with everything they've been missing. And you're getting guys. I think that Kentucky fans don't like always to see the positive side of things. You're getting a lot of reps for guys who are going to be back next year. Like Jalen Lowe says he's coming back. He's injured. That's fine. Otega Owe, Denzel Aberdeen are gone. Jaden Quaintance has gone to the NBA in all likelihood. But you get Colin Chandler a lot of minutes. He's been shooting the heck out of the ball. Malachi Marino, another freshman who, like, yeah, he's not in the same conversation as some of these other guys at the top of the conferences or anything like that, but he's gotten a lot better as he's got more time. Moji Abate is just a junior. Cam Williams could come back next year. Jasper Johnson's been playing a lot. Andre Yelovich is just a freshman by year. So there's a lot of key pieces you bring back. And then when you go spend money this offseason for the transfer portal, maybe it's not 22 million on all these guys. Maybe you spend a lot of money on one or two guys, stars, who help these guys become better players too. So again, roster construction maybe wasn't the best, but also haven't had the full roster available for a lot of the season. And just a good thing long term, even if it's not like showing up in all of the results, even though they have won 8 of their last 10 and losing to on the road to Vanderbilt and on the road to Florida is nothing to be said about, other than Vanderbilt being a loss by 30. All right, Greg, last thing we're going to recap for the week. We have Texas Tech and Arizona. Mentioned earlier, Koa Pete gets hurt after 11 minutes. He scored 2 points. It was a leg injury. Still waiting on word about how serious that could be, what could be the long term implications of that. Toppin has 31 points, 13 to 22 shooting, 13 rebounds. Anderson has 19 points, 8 assists. And just that dynamic duo just keeps on rolling, Greg. So fun to watch every single game. And when they get the third person, fourth person, fifth person to step up, they are so good. We'll say Toby Awaka, the guy I mentioned earlier, who might be like maybe you bring Koa Pete in off the bench. It's because I was kind of surprised that they would have, even if, as good as a freshman as Koa Pete was projected to be, that they would take Toby Awaka out of the starting lineup this year. He comes in, he's 5 of 6 from the floor, very good physical presence, and you know Arizona doesn't get the win, but Toby Awaka puts him in a spot where, like down the stretch, he made plenty of key plays. So, yeah, that's what I got, Greg. I think that's kind of sums up the Arizona parts with Texas Tech. With those two guys on, they can beat almost anyone in the country. So it's fun to watch.
Joe, I'm having a thought. I feel like we've said about, a couple of different teams tonight. They can do it a lot of different ways, but you maybe said this was about Kentucky last year. Like, hey, we don't know who the go-to guy is late. Well, at least Texas Tech knows who the two dudes they want their ball in the hand late. And that may end up, hey, we screen and roll for Christian Anderson and JT Toppin, but then Donovan Atwell is open in the corner and he ends up taking the shot. But that is created by who we want to have, who we want to have the ball late in the game. So they don't have a lot of depth. We know that, but it seems like they have at least direction, leadership, an identity, and that may be worth a lot more than we realized. Obviously, they were able to beat Duke, one of the two teams able to beat Duke. So this team it's dangerous. There's obviously some things that we would like to see that we haven't, some consistency behind those two, but those two guys have been pretty darn good for the whole year. Christian Anderson tried to play in a game last week when he clearly was not feeling well, unlike someone else we've been talking about recently, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I'm with you. It's a fun team, and one I'm going to have to think about when it's time to decide on national title contenders.
Yeah, I think that's another one for me too. And Greg, there was the last shot of regulation for Christian Anderson could have given him the win. Took Toby Awaka down to the post. He saw Grant McCasland getting in his face. Like, what are you doing? Just, either shoot it or create space or do something, but don't take him down to the post and then try like a terrible shot. For my money, Greg, I don't think Christian Anderson is the best point guard in the 2026 NBA draft class. I do think that a lot of the top guys in the class are all freshmen. That's just how it is this year. That's fine. But I do think, in terms of college basketball point guards, if I'm drafting all of them, I think I'm drafting him, maybe Darius Acuff too, as the guy I want on my team because he has put so much of the load on himself this year. He has been creating 8 assists this game. He has plenty of high assist numbers, but he also can create his own shot. He can shoot. I don't think this is a hot take to say that like if you need to win a game in college basketball tomorrow, Christian Anderson might be your guy. He doesn't have the same like Braden Smith is a good pure passing point guard. Jeremy Fears is a good pure passing point guard. But in terms of like this guy can go get you a bucket, this guy can pass the ball a little bit too. I think he might be the guy that I would take most.
Almost like Dame Lillardish. That I just you talking through it kind of gives me that vibe. I don't know if that's the perfect comparison, but kind of a true combo guard.
Yeah, and honestly, he's like Dame. He's not like some huge guy. He's 6'3", 178. It's not like he's abnormally tall for a point guard or even fit in. Like he's a guy that is not going to be picked because of his athleticism as much as his just playmaking skill. 20 points or 19.1 points per game, 7.7 assists. I could see that being a comparison for him. So I wanted to point that out there. I feel like a lot of the guys, like Braden Smith is breaking records. Jeremy Fears, good and bad, getting publicity. There some of these freshmen are getting publicity too, but I don't know. I might take Christian Anderson if I had to do it. We might have to do that, Greg. Before March, maybe after March, we'll do a draft of like if you were trying to win a game today, what players would you pick in college basketball? And that would be a guy I would target because I think he's just very, very good. All right, so Greg, that is our recap for the week. Let's go to our teams who can win. Now, Greg, you had some teams you wanted to you texted me about that you wanted to take off of the list of teams who can win. We are down to 28. The goal is to be at 20 by our first show in March, whatever that is. I don't want to look up the dates. But you have a couple teams you want to get off the list, and I'm okay with all of them. So why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, who did I say? I said I was fine getting rid of Clemson. Who else did I say? Auburn. Auburn probably should have been gone before, but I'm fine getting rid of Auburn. I know there was a third that I thought I said.
You did say so third. I don't know who it was off the top of my head.
This is what
you said NC State. That's what it was.
Was it?
Also, when you get a chance, put your camera down a little bit, buddy. All I can see is your nose up.
Well, you gotta say something earlier.
Well,
How long's it been like that? Since I went to close the door?
Probably. But
right,
you were also
cool.
you were also looking down. But I think NC State was the other team you texted. Maybe I'm wrong, but
it might have been. Hold on. Didn't I literally just text it to you? Yeah, no, I had NC State in there. I mean, that's probably fine.
Okay,
Unless
if you want,
have some ties to them.
I do not.
Just haven't seen what you'd think from a national title contender.
I'm with you. I would say they're in that tier of like next up for me. Like NC State, Indiana are both teams. I'm kind of like that. I've liked the adjustments DeVries have made. We can wait on them a little bit longer if you want, Greg. But I think out of any combination I could ever see winning the NCAA tournament, based on what we've seen so far this year, I don't think either of them are going to be it. But we'll take off NC State to start, and if you want to leave it there, Greg, and leave us at 25, we just have a couple more to get down to 20. That's fine too.
I mean, I'm fine if you want to get rid of Indiana this week.
Let's do it. Let's get on 24. Let's get ahead of schedule here because that will let us focus in on some of these teams. And I'll happily pay the $100. I won't happily pay the $100 if Indiana wins it all, but I think it's good logic that we're doing it the way we are. And going small has been
So
working for going small has been working for him, Greg. But can that win a title with the way that they're constructed? I don't think so.
this is where I feel like it's going to get really tight. So let me rattle off for the people at home who we have left: Duke, Louisville, Carolina, Virginia, St. John's, UConn, Illinois, Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, Purdue, Arizona, BYU, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Texas Tech, Bama, Arkansas, Florida, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Gonzaga, Utah State. The one that's like I feel like going to give us fits is Utah State because they've pretty much done everything you've asked of them. We also still don't have Miami of Ohio on there,
Yeah.
but we ruled them out before we kind of knew what they were. But I just don't know that we're going to get like data points to tell us anything other than what we already know, from here to the end of the season.
I agree. Greg, they still have games against San Diego State and New Mexico. I think if they drop them, they're in big danger. We did see just kind of because it's topical right now since we're talking about it. They decided to kind of blow out Memphis when they didn't need to score even after the game was in hand, and Penny Hardaway wasn't happy. But Jared Calhoun, the
I
coach,
did
was
not
like,
see that.
we need every metric we can. We are a mid major. If we lose some of these games down the stretch, we need to make the tournament, and that we're not like they're probably in right now. But
There.
if they have to do it. That's the way the game is played, and that's just unfortunate. So yeah, I do think like
Joe,
sorry, go ahead.
looking ahead, I love Vanderbilt, but like they're probably next on the chopping block. Virginia's probably next on the chopping block. I think you already mentioned on this pod, Louisville's probably next on the
Well,
chopping block.
yeah, I think those teams like Tennessee's up there, and I think you have to mention the injury team. If we get word that like I don't know if BYU doesn't look good without Richie Saunders, that's something we have to consider. If UNC suddenly Caleb Wilson's out for the year, that's something it's really getting to the nitty gritty. I would say like teams like you said, Greg, Utah State, Vanderbilt, Louisville, Virginia, Tennessee, all right there on that next cusp where I don't think they're winning the national title, but
Let me tell you the
yeah.
one that scares me the most that I think is next on the chopping block, but gives me the heebie-jeebies is Bama. Because we know with the way they play, like we could look up and they beat their first four teams by 30 in the tournament. I just it's scary. Even without an inside presence, they don't have it. It's I just the analytical way they play, man, that's the one that I think I gives me the most. Like, yeah, I like Vanderbilt. They're fun to watch, but I've kind of gotten to the point where it's like, okay, if I look at the top tier, the Michigans and the Dukes and the Yukons and those in the Illinois, like I'm a lot more comfortable with those teams than I am with Vanderbilt. They're a fun team to watch. It's a great story, but that's kind of how Bama's the one that, like, even though I tangibly feel like they are not in the same air as those other teams I just mentioned, the way they play makes me scared to death of saying, yeah, write them off.
I'm with you. I don't. It's going to come down to Greg, and you said it was Utah State. It might be that we at this point they can't do anything else that makes us take them out of the list, other than just the metrics are that bad. We look at it and like Utah State, you're 40th in the defensive efficiency. We've seen teams move from 40th to 25th to be in the top 25 by the end of the tournament, which is like the whole thing. Alabama, you're 50th in defensive efficiency. Like, sorry, you're out. I don't feel good about it, but you're out. That's kind of thing is like we're getting to the point now where the data has had enough time to kind of set in. And while I'm not the biggest analytics guy, Greg, I think there's plenty of skewed data out there. People look at some of the wrong things. I do think Ken Palm over the full season is worth looking at. And it might be, hey, you won both games this week and you looked okay, but we're getting down to the point where 24 teams are left, Greg. It's crazy. We don't even have a top 25 left. Crazy. All right, so we are down to those 24 teams that Greg listed off a second ago. Thank you, Greg, for doing that. Let me save my voice here a little bit. We're going to go to our picks for the week. Greg, tonight, as we're recording this, we have one game going on we're going to pick. We have Houston and Iowa State playing. Iowa State's at home in this one. Greg, who are you going with?
You said, oh, I thought you when you the way you worded it, I thought you said they were playing right now. I was like, no, it's 7:30. They don't play till 9.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, did I miss something? Okay. So now I gotta switch. I gotta switch spreadsheets now. Let's see. Because
You have Houston, buddy. You
I
have Houston.
okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we've already mentioned our qualms with Iowa State. Great floor, but they're going up a team against a team with a lot more depth. They play defense just as well as Iowa State does. So, and the offensive talent is just there. I do like what I've seen from the last couple of weeks. Seeing Chris Sinak really kind of assert himself has been nice. Obviously, the story's been Kingston Flemings and how good he's been as a freshman, but this team is gonna be for sure on the short list of national championship teams for me, unless they have some sort of catastrophic injury or something significant changes. But for now, I'll pick them to win this game. I know it is at Hilton Coliseum. Now I'm blanking. Is it Hilton Coliseum? It's Hilton.
Yeah.
I just can't remember. I can't remember the descriptor.
It's Coliseum, yeah.
Okay, all right. I blanked on myself for a second. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, even though it's on the road, I'll take Houston to win this game.
I'll take Houston as well. I think it's sometimes a cliche to say freshmen aren't freshmen at this point in the season anymore, but like Houston's freshmen have gotten a lot of minutes, and there's been some really good basketball by them. And I think, Kelvin Sampson has said he's never going to start this many freshmen ever again. These guys are good. They got a really balanced team. Iowa State, I think there's still a little bit of Taman Lipsey. I want you to be the more like the keep on scoring. I've said that before, like the last couple weeks. He has to be a better scorer for them. Um, just overall, I think for them to reach their full potential. I'm not saying he's a bad player, he's doing anything wrong, but I think for them to like, hey, we're making a Final Four, Lipsey's going to have to like have some games where he goes off, and I just haven't seen that on a consistent basis to believe it. And against this Houston defense, I think it's going to be a problem. So yes, Greg, Houston for me, still a team. I think, as mentioned a couple episodes ago, I'm kind of deciding between them and Arizona as national title pick for me. It's kind of a spoiler, but maybe that's a good thing. Arizona lost 2 games now. I can pick them, and no one else will. But we'll talk more about our bracket picks later on when we see the bracket. Greg, let's go to Tuesday night. We have Michigan and Purdue.
All right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pick
change.
It's at Mackey. I'm gonna pick. I was back and forth, and if this game was in Ann Arbor, there's no way I'm picking Purdue. But we've already seen Purdue lose. Who did they lose to at home in the last couple of weeks? And it's like their record in that stadium rivals Kansas at Fog. It's pretty darn good. I know this is a huge matchup for them. This is a win I'd like to see them get. I don't know if they're going to get it. If it was not at Mackey, I wouldn't even consider this. But I know Michigan's been on a tear, pretty much just dismantling teams. Maybe Braden Smith picks them apart. Unfortunately, the other side of it is maybe Mara just causes TKR to have another subpar game, just with his length. So I don't know, but I just crazier things have happened. We've seen sillier results in the last couple of weeks. It's at home, so I'll take Purdue.
Yeah, these teams are very similar in some ways in that I trust their front courts and their back courts. There are issues. Obviously, we're nitpicking here because these are 2 of the top 7 teams in the country. But I think what I'll say is I like Michigan's bigs better. I do worry about Elliot Cadeau's turnovers and just being the point guard. Turnovers are a big issue. But I think I like their guards a bit better than Purdue's. I'll take them on the road. I'm taking a lot of road teams this week. I don't necessarily like that, but there are just like some of these matchups where it's just like I just think Michigan's a better team. I'm going to take them over Purdue. I think being at home gives them an edge, Purdue a little bit of an edge, but I just don't think that's good enough to win the game.
Yeah, Joe, just to agree with what you said, counterpoint to me picking Purdue, Michigan's backup point guard is certainly better than the guards coming off the bench for Purdue.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Wednesday picks, Greg. The the first one we have, I guess it's BYU at Arizona. It's actually later than the other game we're going to pick, but BYU at Arizona is the first one we're going to take here, Greg.
Yeah, I'm picking Arizona. We'll see on Pete, but BYU trending down, Arizona coming off 2 losses. I think they get this one figured out at home.
I agree. I can't take BYU until I see something. Maybe I'll take them in a game where they're at home, and I just kind of maybe have a feeling, but on the road, I kind of think Arizona figures it out. And like I said, Toby Awaka is a perfect guy. Like if they, I'm serious. Like if they lost Braden Burries, I'd be way more concerned. But because they have Toby Awaka just to put right in there, I think it's meaningful when they get later on in March. But if for right now, I think it's fine. All right, so the next game we're going to pick also on Wednesday, Arkansas at Alabama. Arkansas 20 in the country, Alabama 25.
Yeah, as Joe mentioned, I added this to the outline late, and I actually added it in the wrong spot. So apologies for the technical difficulties earlier. It's hard to be a podcaster and a producer, but I do my best. You might want to look at my paycheck. I think we need to bump that up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I just think so. I've been saying a lot of times when I'm looking at Arkansas playing games, man, it's erratic, and I love the athleticism, but like I feel like that's going to really play to their favor in this type of game. I think they're going to be able to keep Alabama. They're going to run them off the 3 point line just again with pure athleticism. They don't have a very good inside presence. I think Malik Ewan's going to have a great game. Obviously, Darius Acuff probably going to get his own. Uh, this is where again I know I just said I'm scared of taking them out, but I don't know what else they have this week. This game wasn't even on my radar until I realized it's a ranked team against a ranked team. So by definition, I feel like I have to put it in their picks. Um, I don't know that Bama's. I mean, so what? Last week they had A&M and they had another kind of like middling team. I don't know that they've had any big games lately. I think it was Auburn or something. So they've kind of just been floating out there. I if you want to get back on the radar, like here's your chance. I don't think they get it done though.
With you, they beat Auburn not this past week, but the week before that. They also beat Texas A&M. We were trying to figure out what Texas A&M was. Lost to Florida before that. It's been like you said, they haven't been in the marquee games.
Got annihilated by Florida, correct?
Yeah, they did 100 to 77. Yeah, they do have to earn their way back. Greg, don't we're not going to be able to do the math right now, but it's probably been a long time since a team drops out of the top 25 at this point in the season and ends up winning it all. And they're like if Alabama loses this game to Arkansas, even if they beat LSU in the weekend matchup, they're probably out of the top 25. So that's going to be something tough. I think Darius Acuff is a very good point guard, and I'm going to take that in this game. LeBaron Philon is also getting a lot of draft publicity now. I think just averaging 21 points a game and kind of improving in almost all areas this year has been really good for him. But I think Arkansas has the better overall team, and if Alabama wins because of their strategy of shooting threes in this game, I could see it. But like, you're right, it's tough to take them in so many big games. Just with the roster, I think if they had a different roster construction, I could see taking them with their strategy more like I have in the past. But I don't think this team is quite as good as some of the other teams they've had in the past either. All right, Greg, let's go to Saturday. And just to kind of put it clearly, there's so many top 10 matchups this week, is why we said this is such a good week. We already mentioned Houston, Iowa State, which is tonight, Greg, Michigan, Purdue on Tuesday. This is one of two very big matchups on Saturday. Arizona and Houston is the first one we're going to pick, Greg. It is number 2 versus number 4. Houston is hosting Arizona.
I struggled to pick this one. Both of these teams have a lot of depth. Both of these teams have good freshmen. If I knew Pete was for sure not going to play in this game, I'd probably pick Houston. I still believe in Arizona. These teams are pretty much on the same level for me. I just Arizona coming off 2 losses last week. I think they get the road right this week. They win this game. It is on the road. It is at Houston, but I'll take Arizona.
Yeah, I said earlier, this is my national championship game right here. So it's effectively the two teams I'm kind of deciding between, and we'll see if that holds up throughout the rest of the season. Still time to change our opinions if things go differently in the conference tournaments or into regular season. But I'll go Houston being at home in this one. Co-Pete status unclear. I think these are two, like you said, Greg, very equal teams, very elite teams, both top four on the net. Um, just resumes look very similar. I'm going to go Houston because they're at home. Could see it going the other way on a neutral floor, though. All right, next one up, Greg. We have the Yukon Huskies against the Villanova Wildcats. Villanova still just 5 losses on the season. They're not in the top 25. This win would put them in it.
Yeah, this game is at Villanova. I'm going to take UConn. UConn's coming off what, a 4-point win at Butler and another game earlier in the week that was close. And that's coming off of losing to St. John's the week before. So they haven't been tested a lot. We did say that. There's not a lot going on in the Big East. This is a game if they want to remain one of the top 5-6 teams looking at a national title, need to get this done.
Yeah, Villanova is just has the 5 losses, but you look at what they've done in the Big East so far, and they've pretty much just taken care of business, right? They lost to UConn, they lost to St. John's. I think they're going to lose again to UConn this week. I do think there's a crap game at Xavier as well. I think if they're looking ahead to UConn, it's like the first meaningful game they play. I mean, if you're looking at big games in a while. I'm not sure Xavier's the best team, but they're middle of the pack, Big East, Greg. We never thought we'd say that at this point. As the first team we ruled out as a national title contender. I think UConn's just so much better. I think it could be close. I think the last time these two teams played, it wasn't too far of a margin either. So I'm going to go UConn, but I will say very impressed with the job Kevin Willard has done. And Greg, one of the funniest things all year is anytime Kevin Willard posts, Derek Queen just kind of hates that guy so much, and now that he just has a response to him, and it's really funny. I think Derek Queen may have gone back to Maryland for another year if
I
Willard
didn't
stayed
know.
too.
I didn't know that was still going on. I knew that story. I
Yeah,
didn't know it was still going on.
something happened last week and I saw it. It's my funny. It's the funniest bit. I don't know if it's a bit. I don't know if they really hate each other. It's good though. Next one up, Greg, another one of the top 10 matchups we mentioned, Michigan and Duke. Now, for me, Greg, I'm the guy who says that I like the 2 versus 4 matchup better in terms of the teams. There's probably equally as many people out there who are like, hey, Michigan, Duke, that's my national championship. Not me, but maybe other people. Michigan, Duke, very big game, 2 very big games. This one's in Washington, D.C. Greg, who do you have?
I am going to take Michigan, especially if I'm going to take them to lose to Purdue. I think this is going to be a fantastic game. You're right. We've got possibly, I think I saw somebody post, "Hey, you want to see the Final Four? They're playing this weekend." Like maybe, possibly, but yeah, the guard play is more of a question for Duke than it is for Michigan. You probably agree with that as well. We just had that conversation about them with Purdue. I think Duke probably got the best player on the floor. It's a question of what's around them. I think Michigan's a better team overall, so I'll take them.
I'm going Michigan too. I think that they have better front court players overall than Duke does. Obviously, Cam Boozer, as you said, is the best player on the floor. That is not going to change. I think the responsibility he has to kind of run things is a little bit much. I think that could get to him when they're playing an elite team that has so many bodies they could throw Cam Boozer to guard him. It's going to be crazy. So I'll go Michigan, and I think this will be a good learning opportunity for Duke and give us a good indication if the guard play is going to be an issue in March, or at least an issue at the extent that we think of it right now. All right, the last game we're going to pick, Greg, we have Iowa State and BYU. Maybe we thought this game would be a little bit better at the start of the week before the injury news and before BYU has not won very many big games. But who you taking?
Iowa State.
Yeah, me
mean,
too.
it's the BYU remains in the top 25. I feel like we got to keep them in there. AJ DeBonsa is still appointment television. Rob Wright, a lot of fun. Sucks that they lost Richie Saunders for the year. This is like the week for BYU. I think when we were talking about them, I mentioned like what they have left. I don't think I realized that both two of their 3 like big marquee games are this week. So really unfortunate timing to lose Richie Saunders when you're coming into a week, you're playing against 2 really good teams, and you're in need of a big win. So,
Yeah.
sorry, but Iowa State. Next question.
Yeah, Iowa State for me as well, Greg. Easy pick. I will say bad injury luck for BYU. Richie Saunders out for the season. Dawson Baker, their other shooter, out for the season too. He was injured after 6 games this year. Could have had a big impact on this team and being even better than what they were winning some of these games. I will say, Greg, I think the number one NBA jam duo in the college basketball is obviously JT Toppin and Christian Anderson. But now that BYU doesn't have players around them anymore, it's gonna AJ DeBonsa and Robert Wright are gonna be fun to watch, putting up like NBA Jam type numbers. So it'll be fun to watch. We'll have to do it. Maybe that's another thing we can do after the season. Greg, we can do the NBA Jam duos and rank them. So yeah, that's the picks for the week. Greg, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out, Joe.
Ooh.
We like to respect our loyal listeners. And my good friend Jason Ferris last week pointed out that our producer pulled the wrong audio file for Spotify. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it was some Reds podcast. What's it called, Joe? This Reds podcast you should check out.
I don't know what it's called.
Reds Rundown.
Reds Rundown. Yeah.
Yeah, you should check that out if you haven't. Joe's on it, and his co-owner of the website, Rob, is also on it. So
Yeah, Greg was really confused when he heard the Reds run down twice last week, but that's how it goes. I don't have any further things to put. We've been talking for a while, probably our longest episode, probably until we get to Selection Sunday. Reminding everyone to like and subscribe to the TGH YouTube channel. Also, like and subscribe to wherever you get podcasts by looking at our show title, TGH College Hardwood Podcast. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.